Our scripture reading today is taken from Isaiah 6, verses 1 through 8. In the year that King Uzziah died, I saw the Lord sitting on a throne, high and lofty, and the hem of his robe filled the temple. Seraphs were in attendance above him. Each had 6 wings. With 2 they covered their faces, and with 2 they covered their feet, and with 2 they flew. And one called to another and said, Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. The whole earth is full of his glory. The pivots on the thresholds shook, and the voices of those who called, and the house filled with smoke. And I said, Woe is me, I am lost, for I am a man of unclean lips, and I live among a people of unclean lips. Yet my eyes have seen the King, the Lord of hosts. Then one of the seraphs flew to me, holding a live coal that had been taken from the altar with a pair of tongs. The seraph touched my mouth with it and said, Now that this has touched your lips, your guilt has departed, and your sin is blotted out. Then I heard the voice of the Lord saying, Whom shall I send? And who will go for us? And I said, Here am I, send me. So it is written in the Holy Bible. May we be blessed to find meaning and understanding in these words. Isaiah, the prophet for whom the book of Isaiah is named, has played a significant role in both Christian and Jewish traditions. And according to historian Sheldon H. Blank, the Gospels lean more heavily on the book of Isaiah than on any other prophetic text. Now, Isaiah might be described as the reluctant prophet because so much of his message and visions to the Jewish people were messages of doom. And who wants to hear bad news? Not the people of Israel. But Isaiah's calling to be God's messenger was stronger than his fear of rejection and his own doubts as to whether he had the stuff of a prophet. Isaiah determined to press forward anyway. And Mr. Blank describes it like this. Isaiah saw God and was overwhelmed by his contact with the divine glory and holiness. He became agonizingly aware of God's need for a messenger to the people of Israel, and despite his own sense of inadequacy, he offered himself for God's service. Here am I, send me. He was thus commissioned to give voice to the divine word. And it was no light undertaking. He was to condemn his own people and watch the nation crumble and perish. And as Isaiah tells it, he was only too aware that coming with such a message, he would experience bitter opposition, willful disbelief, and ridicule, to withstand which he would have to be inwardly fortified. All this came to him in the form of a vision and ended as a sudden, firm, and lifelong resolve. So as our scripture reading just showed us, that vision is the beginning of Isaiah's 40-year call to prophecy. So I'm going to read it once again, but I'm going to give you the translation from the Message. In the year that King Uzziah died, I saw the Master sitting on a throne, high, exalted, and the train of his robes filled the temple. Angels, seraphs hovered above him, each with 6 wings. With 2 wings they covered their faces, with 2 their feet, and with 2 they flew, and they called back and forth one to another. Holy, holy, holy is the God of angel armies. His bright glory fills the whole earth. The foundations trembled at the sound of the angel voices, and then the whole house filled with smoke. And I said, Doom! It's doomsday! I'm as good as dead. Every word I've spoken is tainted, blasphemous even. And the people I live with talk the same way. using words that corrupt and desecrate. And here I looked God in the face, the King, God of the angel armies. Then one of the angel seraphs flew to me. He held a live coal that he had taken with tongues from the altar. He touched my mouth with the coal and said, "Look, this coal has touched your lips. Gone your guilt, your sins wiped out." And then I heard the voice of the Master, "Whom shall I send? Who will go for us?" I spoke up, "I'll go, send me." I'll go, send me. Prophetic words, simple, certain, clear, strong, and hopeful. I'll go, send me. Now Isaiah considered the people of Israel lacking in many ways. He even considered them godless, which is striking considering the covenant that God made with Israel. The long-standing covenant that they were to be his chosen people and he their God was in fact a broken covenant in Isaiah's estimation because of the people of Israel's failure to behave as God would have preferred. 8th century Israel was a time steeped in injustice, and many people suffered because of that injustice. God, however, needed a messenger, and Isaiah responded, "I'll go, send me." Now, Isaiah's personal history is at best sketchy, but it could be surmised that because of his association with kings that he counseled, he was well educated. Some of us suggested that he might have been an aristocrat or even a royal. But despite those elite associations, Isaiah's sympathies were most definitely with the poor and the disenfranchised, not with the 1%ers of his day. He had what I like to call a crossover personality. He was able to connect with people from a broad social spectrum that transcended class and occupations. Mr. Blank notes, he was at home with the unprotected, the widowed and orphaned, with the dispossessed, homeless, landless, and with the resourceless victims of the moneyed man's court. He was also acquainted with the rapacious authors of the prevailing misery, promulgators of discriminatory laws, venal judges, greedy land grabbers, fancy women, thieving and carousing men of means, and irresponsible leaders, both civil and religious. In other words, he was intimately aware of the inequities and evils of human society, which may have been no worse in Israel in the 8th century before Christ than many critics believe that were almost everywhere in the 20th century after Christ, including now. Because of this personal history, one could assume that when Isaiah saw that vision of God, he was predisposed to find meaning in it, and because of his inherent faith that people mattered to God, that he mattered to God, when asked, "Whom shall I send?" Isaiah replied, "I'll go, send me." Isaiah intuited that God cared more about people and their behavior rather than the often rehearsed rituals which could be devoid of meaning. As a prophet, Isaiah wasn't blessed with an easy mission. Often frustrated and disheartened, he faced frequent rejection as the bearer of bad news. But he wasn't a fatalist. Despite foreseeing the destruction of Jerusalem, he offered God's people a way forward, and that was staying true to the covenant. Isaiah shared the traditional conviction, along with other prophets, that despite God's obvious love and care for his people, according to Blank, this arrangement was wholly conditional and contingent on the people's conduct. He continues, Isaiah's theology included the sometimes comforting view that God shapes history, traditionally entering the human scene to rescue his people from national peril. But, Isaiah surmised, God could intervene quite as properly to chastise his own people because of their aberrant behavior, and he could employ a human agent, such as a conquering foe, to that end. It would be wrong to suppose that Isaiah came to Israel simply to announce the approaching disaster. Painfully sensitive to the rottenness of his society, Isaiah foresaw its consequent collapse. But he also knew and offered an alternative to tragedy. His people's survival depended on their acceptance again of the ancient moral demands. By returning, they might be saved. To obtain their return was his program. Or differently and more properly stated, because he spoke for God and of God, his goal was to redirect his people into the ways acceptable to the God whom by their conduct they were alienated, and so to save them from catastrophe. He screamed dread warnings and pleaded for amendment. He gave way to despair only because his program had no success. His people seemed to him bent on self-destruction. That was the sickening course of their destiny as he saw it unfolding. Nonetheless, facing endless pushback, undetermined, God's servant, when asked, said, "I'll go, send me." So as I researched this often quoted prophet who gave us the very familiar swords into plowshares passage in Isaiah 2, I couldn't avoid the obvious question: how do I, or how do we, stack up against Isaiah's prophetic mission and willingness to be God's messenger? It seemed like everything that Isaiah had experienced in his life prepared him to answer God's call in the affirmative when asked, "Whom shall I send?" For Isaiah, the experience that had gone into the shaping of his young life, his acquaintance with the arrogant rich and the suffering poor, his seeming knowledge of the prophet Amos and his heritage of tradition, both ethnic and religious, and above all, perhaps a new and overwhelming sense of the majestic holiness of God, all of those things merged, coalesced, and he knew that his God was sending him with words for his people, and that, reluctant or not, he was compelled to go. From the start, or retrospectively, he was aware of a frantic need, impossible to satisfy, to call his people back from the brink of peril. His vision was his moment of insight and resolve, when complete clarity and instantaneously he knew what he must do and say. Concludes God. Now, when I entered interfaith ministry program about 18 years ago, my original intention was the study of comparative religion and not to become an ordained minister. However, once I started the program, I felt like everything I had done in my life had led me there. And as I quietly walked the labyrinth on our first day of class, I also surprisingly felt called to follow the ordination track. 2.5 years later, during my ordination ceremony, I was asked to state my purpose or mission, and I replied, to simply go where God leads me. That was it. Where I can be useful and helpful to others, I'll go. Send me. And when I am helpful, I find that that's my greatest joy. Among my greatest joys is that I found this place and this space that has supported me and nurtured me, and most of all, modeled for me what a prophetic mission and vision is all about. Isaiah, no doubt, in my estimation, would find himself completely at home here with a room full of people who consistently reply, "I'll go, send me." Who consistently reply, "I'll go, send me." So, since this just happened to me, I'd like to briefly share my latest Go Where God Leads Me story. So Eunice is a 30-year-old friend of mine that I met about 3.5 years ago, who's from Morocco. He came here several years ago to attend college at Arcadia University. He came on a student visa. He started going to school, and he went for about 1.5 years, and then he ran out of money. So he quit school so that he could make money to go to school. Well, that was not a good thing, because once he quit school, he became essentially illegal, because he came here on a student visa. So, so when the school reported him, a few weeks later he got a knock on his door, and it was someone from Homeland Security. And the people from Homeland Security arrested him. Now, we found out later that that was an illegal arrest, because it should have been immigration people who came to see him. But anyway, he was arrested, and for 2 years after that, he was monitored. He had an ankle monitor on, and he was visited at least once a month to make sure that he lived where he said he would live. But because he didn't have working papers, he was relegated to getting jobs that were under the table, and essentially all he could do was either landscaping work or working in a restaurant, and often was exploited because he got low pay, but he did what he could. In the meantime, he met a woman, Candace, a wonderful young lady. They fell in love, got married, and they had a little daughter, Amira. Actually, I officiated their wedding. Anyway, 4 months ago, during one of our meetings, I got a call that Candace, Eunice's wife, had passed away suddenly. And I left the meeting, went to see him. They also had 3 other kids, because she had 3 daughters from their first marriage. Anyway, they had all been living together. When she passed away, Candace's ex-husband invited Eunice and his daughter Amira to live with them so that all the girls could stay together. And they did that, and it worked out really well for a while. But consequently, Eunice started having difficulties being a present dad. He had problems finding work, and he wanted to be able to provide a real stable environment for his daughter. So he's in the process of becoming legal. If he left the country right now, he wouldn't be able to come back. So he tried to get his parents or his sister to come to this country to take his daughter and live with them for a while until he's able to go and get them. They weren't able to get visas. And then, because he couldn't leave the country, he was stuck. He didn't know what to do. So he came to me and said, "Bill, would you like to go to Morocco?" And I said, "Sure," but we'd always planned, he'd always said he wanted to take me to Morocco and show him this way. He said, "But I'd like you to take my daughter. Would you do that?" I said, "Yes, I'll do it." Well, that turned out to be an amazing thing. I had a lot of concern about getting over there because she was really attached to her husband. So 2 weeks before we left, he came and lived with me so that she could become more familiar with me. I knew her already. Well, anyway, when we got to JFK Airport and I had to separate from Eunice, she and I went our own way. There wasn't a sound out of her. Any other time, every time he walked out the door, she would scream. So we got in our little buggy, we went through customs. I think she was totally fascinated by everything. So the deal was, when we flew there, because of her age and her size, she couldn't have her own seat. I was supposed to hold her through the flight. Well, as it turned out, when we got on the flight, there was a woman sitting next to me who was a little upset she wasn't with her friends. So they had extra seats on the plane. The stewardesses and the other people on the plane fell in love with Amira. So they arranged it for the woman to stay with her friends, and then for Amira to have her own seat right next to me on the plane, which was a godsend. And then she slept through the whole night, not a sound. There wasn't a cry out of her until the next morning when we had to go through customs. But anyway, we meet her family, they were overwhelmed. They were just thrilled. They had known Amira from FaceTime, and her parents were both, her grandparents were both retired, and they were just excited to have the opportunity to help out. Anyway, I go to their house. They give me the red carpet treatment. They're so thankful. They gave me this outfit that I'm wearing as a gift, and and I just had the greatest time meeting people that are very different from me, but so much like me. So anyway, I had a great trip, and if anybody else needs a 2-year-old kid to go someplace, send me. I'll go.
About a 16-year-old.
16-year-old? Yes, I don't know about that. So anyway, I had a very successful trip, and I'm really thankful. There were a lot of things that came out of it that were really a blessing that I didn't expect. So, and once again, thank you for all your thoughts and prayers. So that's it. But I just want you to one other thing. If you didn't get a chance to watch the recent royal wedding of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, I would recommend that you go on YouTube and listen to Bishop Michael Curry's message to not just the couple, but to the whole world. Imagine a world, he said, when love is the way, poverty will become history. When love is the way, the earth will be a sanctuary. So be it.